Multiple Zoning Board of Appeals. Tonight is Wednesday, July 21st. It is 7 o'clock, and we have a number of hearings this evening. What we're going to try to do is move some of the smaller ones along and then get to the one that many of the people are here for tonight, which is the solar panels on North Street. So the first case we have is a remand case. Case number 2025. 300 Stone Street, remand from land court relating to a decision of the Zoning Board of Appeals that was filed with the clerk on January 4th for a special permit for the zoning bylaws to allow construction of a single-family dwelling in an area designated as floodplain district in zoning district RB, Residence B. So at a previous meeting, we had the proponent of this present their reasons why they thought that we should have allowed it, and we agreed to have a peer review done by GZA engineers, and GZA engineers provided us with a report, and the report is dated July 15th. Board members have had a chance to review it, and it's basically, Patrick, I believe we have the person from GZA here right now.
Yeah, so the engineer for the project, Peter Burrell, is calling in.
Okay, he's calling in. Okay. So we received the letter on the review of it, and they did a rather extensive job with it, I think, and looked at the floodplain issues, and they're all outlined, including conclusions and recommendations. So, board members, have you had a chance to review this and take a look at it? And once he gets there, he'll give a summary of his peer review report.
It's Patrick's on the local. So, the board is right now, so I'm going to just give a quick presentation, a quick overview of your work.
Okay, Peter, good evening. This is John Lee from the Zoning Board of Appeals. I have the other board members. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, John.
Okay. So you were doing the peer review for this floodplain area, and we have the report in front of us. Could you give us a brief summary, which we do have at the end, but do you have any comments on this?
Yeah, I think really the letter has three main points, and I'll just throw them out. If there's any discussion, we can go back on it. The first is that the site is fully within the scheme of floodplain as published in the flood insurance rate map of 2012. It's clear from our figure 2, which is an excerpt from that flood map, that the site is adjacent to the Spring Brook, is
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. Okay. Is the applicant here?
Yes, good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. Brian Almeida for the applicant.
Good evening. Go ahead. Do you have anything to say?
I do. I've also had the opportunity to review GZA's peer review letter, and I would just point the board's attention to page 3, the first line of paragraph number 1, in which GZA concludes that the compensatory storage calculation fulfills the requirement of section 11.3.b.2 of the bylaw. And I'd suggest that that was the purpose of GZA's peer review, was the applicant contended at the first go-around that we did comply with this section of the bylaw. At least a majority of this board disagreed with that contention, and now the peer reviewer, despite some other disagreements that we might have with some of the other things in this report, what we do agree on is that we do meet the requirements of the bylaw. So I'd suggest that with that impediment removed, the board can and should vote to approve the project.
I'll also add the next line is, however, and then he lists out all the issues, and we just heard him talk about the issue of the calculations that were provided were based on stationary calculations of water and not moving water.
I'm happy to address, I did submit a letter to the board. I'm in
We've got that letter. Does anybody have any questions on the letter? Yeah, so we had an engineer peer review, take a look at it, provided us the information that we asked for, and then we had a letter from, was a letter from you addressing
Yes, and
the engineer?
well, it was written with the assistance of Rob Truax, the engineer for this project. I certainly am not an engineer, and I don't pretend to be, but I consulted with Mr. Truax, and every engineering assertion therein is Mr. Truax's and not mine.
As part of the special permit authority, we have, the ability to consider appropriate conditions and safeguards beyond, sort of what's reasonable under circumstances beyond what's contained explicitly in the bylaw. So, GZA, I'd recommended using, I guess, the more current or more sophisticated technique to do the compensatory storage calculation. And they also asked for a storage routing computation to be provided that quantifies the contributory rate of runoff to the basin. Are you willing to undertake those analyses and submit them to the board?
As much as I would love to answer that question, I'm absolutely going to have Mr. Truax come up and answer it because it is an engineering question, and I wouldn't want to speak out of turn.
I guess I'm not about both aspects of this here. Is the applicant willing to undertake that analysis?
Again, I can't speak to the feasibility of what you're asking, so I'd rather have Mr. Truax answer the question.
I'm sorry, Mr. Joe, I couldn't hear you back there. Could you just repeat the?
So in the GZA report, they had a couple of recommendations about doing some additional studies.
Correct.
One was, at a minimum, it says GZA recommends the applicant commission the performance of a detailed backwater computer simulation to estimate the underlying water surface profile under both pre and post-development conditions. Another request was to do an inflow-outflow storage routing computation to be provided that quantifies the contributory rate of runoff to the basin emanating from the roadway and from the site. I'm just asking, I'm not asking for what the answer of those analyses is, but is the applicant prepared to perform that and submit it to the board?
So the question is the applicant prepared to submit those analyses? I think at this time the answer would be no. Am I correct? No. Our feeling was that according to your regulations, that we're not required to do those studies, that we were required to do compensatory flood storage, which we provided. So I do want to point out that, to make a statement that the entire site is within the 100-year floodplain, that's an inaccurate statement. And if you look at his figure 1 in his report, Zone X, which is hatched, is outside and above the 100-year flood elevation according to the flood study maps. We use the FEMA maps as a general guide to find the areas of flood zones, but then we go to the actual floodway study to do the actual elevations across the site, and that's what we use to do our calculations. So whenever we go out and survey a piece of property, your house may be in a flood zone, but when we go out and do an actual survey of it, it may not be within that elevation zone because we did a survey. So just to say it's within the FEMA map does not put the whole site within the 100-year floodplain. The hatched area that's shown is Zone X. Zone X is outside the 100-year flood zone. So if that street were to flood under today's conditions, that entire site would not be inundated underwater, according to the floodway maps.
Go ahead.
A floodway map has to do with the allowable encroachment on a floodplain. But if the applicant is contesting that the flood map, the firm map is not correct, then they really would need to file for either a letter of map amendment or a letter of map revision, which is a formal process through the town and through FEMA to, change the current, the way the flood shows on the current published map.
Okay, I understand a bit about the FEMA map, so I agree with what you're saying. Thank you. Okay, anything else, Bob?
Well, the other concern that the board has, I think, and expressed at the first hearing was that, sort of the downstream consequences of the 100-year flood. But the GZA report also kind of makes the point that if a dwelling is constructed there, that might have implications for the nature, the classification of the dam and other, just because of should there be a flood, there might be implications for the
So again, the house we're proposing is with 90% of it is outside the 100-year flood. There's only that slight piece down the middle that splits the two zone X's that's 100-year flooding where the house is situated. That house is situated primarily out above the 100-year flood zone on this site. So the flows coming across, if they were to come, are going to go around the house. They're going to go around those high spots as they do today. The house is situated in the same area. I mean, I understand what he's saying about going for a map amendment, but that's not what we're asking for here. That's only if you want to take your house out of the floodplain and not pay flood insurance. This house is not situated, that piece of land that's Zone X is not in the 100-year flood, based on the elevation survey.
But there's a portion of the building that's proposed that.
Where the two Zone X's divide down the middle, that's the area that's in the 100-year flood.
Board members, anybody else have any questions on this? Town council, this is a remand to the board. How do we close it, or does the applicant request to close it, or how does that go?
Yes, you would, if you're ready to close it, you would make that motion to close the hearing. You're gonna treat, this is on remand from the land court. First of all, good evening, George Pucci from Town Council's office. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. This is on remand from the land court. There was a lawsuit from your prior decision. Now that it's been remanded and you've publicly noticed it, you're gonna treat this like you would any other application. So when you're through with the hearing, you would move to close the public hearing, then deliberate and make a decision. You can ask the applicant if they want to submit any further information to keep the hearing open. It's up to you how you want to handle it.
Seeing that this is a remand, I don't see that we've done what was agreed upon, a peer review was done, and I don't see a need for anything else at this point.
It's just on, not procedurally, just substantively. If you think you've received all the substantive information you need, then you're free to go ahead and close the hearing.
Board members, do you want? Is there anybody from the public to speak on 300 Stone Street? Do you want additional information?
Well, it's the applicant, it sounds like they're not planning to submit anything, any technical information in response to the GZA report, and I don't think, if that's the case, then I don't know whether the information that would be relevant for that decision.
close the hearing? Moved by Suzanne, second by Jane. Any further discussion? Closing the hearing? Okay. All those in favor of closing the hearing, say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstained, so carried. Okay, now, on the remand, and George, can you guide us? We don't do a lot of remand cases. How do we do that? Do we say, remand of case number 2025?
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna deliberate on the substantive information that was put before you and take a vote on whether you wanna issue the permit or not.
Does anybody want to deliberate right now? Do you feel you have enough information to vote at this point? Drew, do you feel you have enough information with the GZA report and the comments from the council from the applicant?
I do.
You want to deliberate on that? Okay. So could I, so again, remand case, how do we word it?
Take a, entertain a motion to approve or deny the permit.
Okay. But I have so it's just the permit, it's not nothing to do with the remand, this is just the permit coming back.
Correct. If you were to issue the permit, we would advise the land court that the case is moot. If you're to deny the permit, we will report to the court that the remand was unsuccessful and that they have to put the case back on. Yeah, I think it would be helpful to have a decision.
Well, I would, if that's the case, I think we should hold off, let's get a decision drafted, and then we can vote on it at another meeting.
Yeah, when is your next meeting?
We have one next week.
Okay. Yeah, I can't be here next week.
I know, but if we get a draft decision,
Yeah, that'd be fine. Right,
I feel more comfortable doing it like that.
sure.
The board members, we close the hearing, but do you feel more comfortable getting a draft decision in front of us that we can vote on?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that are you okay with the land court if they issue their decision next week? And then we can report after.
Yeah.
It's better to have a written decision, I think.
No issues.
Okay, Peter from GZA, thank you for joining us this evening. Appreciate your comments, thank you. Thank you, Patrick. Okay, so that case is closed, we'll get a draft decision, and then we'll vote on it next week, if that's okay with everybody. Okay, next case we have is, we're gonna jump up to case number 2111. This is for Tesla at 295 Union Street. There's a number of issues with this application, and is the applicant here right now? Talk to them outside. You want to come forward, identify yourself for the record?
Are we allowed to all go to the mic?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go after Bruce then.
And just so, I know most people are here for the solar projects on North Street. They're gonna open this case because they have to. They're gonna give a quick explanation to the zoning board, and then we're gonna move on to the North Street case.
Great. Well, thank you for having us. Good evening. I am Fabiola Lozoya. I'm part of the retail development at Tesla. I'm a senior design manager, and I collaborate with teams across the US, Canada, and Mexico on the design and permitting of our service centers. I have here with me Asen Zhang with Callison RTKL, our architect, and Mike Yantile with Kimley Horn, our civil engineer. So I'm going to let them speak about the project and the scope of work, and then if there are any operations questions regarding to the site and what we're planning on doing there, I can speak in regards to that.
Hi, good evening. I'm the architect of this project. We are proposing a Tesla pre-delivery inspection and service center in this existing warehouse building. And we understand that the service use is not permitted as of right. It's an expanded use. So we do need to apply for a special use permit for that. And on top of that, this existing building is located in a floodplain. So we need another special use permit for that issue. So I'm going to introduce the tenant improvement we are proposing for this building. So first of all, we will install some new chargers for the electrical cars, like 2 exterior charging posts and 10 interior wall chargers. And then we are going to install a new interior wash bay and also update the septic system accordingly to accommodate the new capacity. And also we will install a small paint booth in this building for some minor touch-up work. And for the site, we are going to add 2 ADA parking spaces there to serve this building. So kindly note that existing parking lot is a large parking lot shared by, I think, 2 buildings and several tenants. So Tesla is only going to take a small portion of it. And also, that parking lot is not striped right now. So what we show there on the site plan is more like a conceptual plan of how many cars can be parked. So, yep, that's the architectural scope.
Hi, good evening, members of the board. Mike Antal, Kimley-Horn, civil consultant. Just to touch base based on what Asen said, the civil, sorry, yeah, can you hear me? The civil portion of the civil scope, as Asen mentioned, is limited to restriping to accommodate ADA accessibility requirements. We're proposing 2 new ADA stalls at the southeast corner of the building at the entrance to the new Tesla space. And we're also proposing, in terms of site work, trenching for a new sewer force main. And working with the plumbing consultant, we've determined that the existing septic system on site is inadequate, unable to accept the new flows for the new tenant improvements. So we are proposing a sewer force main pump station as a part of the project. It's roughly about 460 linear feet from the north side of the building all the way to the existing public sewer main in Union Street. We received comments from the Board of Health, which I don't think we take objection to, and also Concom. Unfortunately, we just received comments from the town engineer about an hour ago, so we unfortunately aren't prepared to address those at this time.
So the comments from the town engineer listed a number of issues. There's a lot of clarification that needs to be done in the plans, and you'll also have to go to the Board of Health for permitting with them for the septic and
Right.
things like that.
There's an abandonment.
So one of the what's your time frame? What's your time frame on this?
It's a good question.
Well, as soon as we can get it permitted.
Okay, but clearly there's a number of issues you have with the zoning
Yep.
board, and you still have to go to conservation, you have to file with the
Exactly.
Conservation Commission. So, I spoke to you outside, we're
Yeah.
not going to wrap this up tonight.
Understood.
So I think that what we should do is continue this out until sometime in September,
Okay,
to give you a chance to get the plans and then also your filings with the other boards, so
Okay.
that they can run concurrently.
okay, perfect.
Amy, did you want to add anything else? We just introduced the case this evening. Is there anybody from the public to speak on Tesla at Union Street? Yeah, oh yeah.
On the plan, I just want to make sure I understand that you're
Yeah.
not proposing an expansion of the building.
No.
Just refitting an interior.
Correct, yep.
And what is that space currently used for, the existing building?
Well, we're actually occupying it. We're not doing the services yet, but we do have a certificate of occupancy to store vehicles inside. You're welcome. I do want to point out that, this location will not be customer facing. It's just a support location for our Dedham location and the Boston metro area. So customers aren't expected to come here. It'll just be an employee internal function.
Great. Amy, what's the next date we have in September? Oh, yeah, we have a question. Go ahead.
Can I speak?
Sure.
Hi.
Please identify yourself.
Seth Longley. and I get deliveries of fresh fish from the river about once or twice a year from my friend who fishes in it. And it's a very wonderful fish. It's one of the last cold streams that's anywhere in eastern Massachusetts. And taking away that opportunity is something I would be very concerned with. Also, I have got some qualms about how this is a off-site thing. This is a support structure. That means their Dedham facility is insufficient to hold the volume of painting and repair shops. So this is going to be, in my mind, a pretty large support structure if they're looking to support this. And the fact that it would be just a small painting booth, in my mind, is not really evident given my knowledge and and Tesla's reputation of bad painting, poor quality on first things. And I think this is going to be a much bigger operation than what we might see from the presentation. I would also like to note that a repair center is sort of like a auto recovery center, and that is one of the prohibited uses in a wetland area. So their repair station, I'm all for your other things. Oh, sorry. I'm all for the basic inspection, maybe even wash. I haven't decided about that. I'm a little scared about runoff and wash basins and all that, but that might be mitigated in my mind. But the painting and the rework, I'm very, very skeptical of, and I prefer it not be there, given they're already overrunning their Dedham facility. And if they move all of their Dedham facility work to Walpole, then we're going to get all that pollution instead of Dedham. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments, because what's going to happen now is, the idea is that it's an old industrial building there now, and hopefully, if this does go forward, they're going to make improvements and it will become modernized so that we don't have those runoff problems that you identified. So we'll continue this, but you'll have more chances to talk and hear what they're proposing in detail.
Okay, thank you.
Board members, anything? So you want to continue this until September 15th? You want to continue until September 15th?
Sure.
Okay. So this case will be continued until September 15th. No further notice will be given, and we'll meet up with you folks then.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah. You want to make motion made by Dan, second by Dan. Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor of continuing, say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstained, so carried. Okay. Town council. I'm going to step down because I have a conflict with this next case.
You can ask if they want to proceed, but you can open it the way you're doing it. You're going to follow your practice while appointing them.
As you can all just see, the chair just stepped down, and we're going to have Dave, our alternate member, be a part, so there'll be five members. This is an application from Kearsage Energy, case 21-8, respect to the property located at 1377 North Street, Walpole, Mass. It's in the zoning district rural. The application is for an administrative appeal of the building commissioner with respect to the denial of an application to construct and operate a 5.0 megawatt AC
speak first, or do you want me to speak to the
It's up to
denial?
you. Typically, I would say, the appellant would want to speak first. This is up to you, though, as the chair. I did want to just make sure, I did speak to counsel outside about the recusal and the perspective that we would end up losing you during this public hearing. So if they want to proceed tonight.
We want to go forward.
Okay. So I'd do it the way you normally would and hear from the
I'd
applicant.
like to hear from Kearsarge first, if that's okay. Please. Is there going to be a PowerPoint using this?
Yes.
All of them? Can everybody see it okay?
Hi, good evening, fellow board members and general public. My name's Bethany Bartlett. I'm general counsel at Kearsarge Energy. And as noted, we're here on an appeal for denial of our building permit for a ground-mounted solar project located on North Street, 1377 North Street, which is property currently owned by the county. So we're here tonight for the three reasons that the building inspector denied our permit. First, noting that the use is not allowed in the zoning district. Second, that the Dover Amendment in this particular instance is not applicable. And third, that application of the zoning bylaw will negligibly affect the essential government function doctrine. So we are going to present tonight our outside counsel, Dan Bailey from Pierce Atwood, will go through the legal issues in more detail, showing that this decision should be overturned based on the following reasons. First, the Dover Amendment uniquely applied to this project is protected from zoning under both the solar energy and educational use, that the essential government function doctrine is materially prohibited in this instance if applied. And currently we have already built a parking canopy project as well as some rooftop projects, which we will be going through in a few minutes. And the parking canopy was already approved under the essential government function doctrine. Historically, this would be one of many of our public hearings that we've had to date. We had one last fall with the general public, and we've had many meetings through the county and through the Aggie School, our partners on this project. So I would then like to turn this over to our managing director at Kearsarge, Andrew Bernstein, and we will trade places.
Thank you. Thank you for letting us present. So very quickly on Kearsarge, we're a renewable energy development company with a focus on sustainability and working to provide environmental and economic benefits to all project stakeholders, including the communities in which we work. We work very hard to be in partnership, whether it's a school, a town, a private entity, to work and do what's best for the community overall. Since 2009, Kearsarge, based in Boston, has developed and financed more than 150 megawatts. We have 38 projects operating right now, and we've been working very closely and have had no concerns at all from an environmental perspective, a business perspective, and working with our partners to help them save money and utilize the assets of renewable energy. The project on the bottom of this slide is a farm in Great Barrington that's particularly appropriate, where we save the farm from going bankrupt
by putting solar on a portion of the unused farm. So we work really hard to do what's right for the community overall. From an environmental perspective, we're forecasting to generate more than 2.2 billion kilowatt hours of electricity over the next 25 years, and that's enough to displace conventional generation to prevent the release of 1.7 million metric tons of CO2. Our focus has been, as I said, on the public and the nonprofit sectors. We work with multiple schools. This is just some of the Massachusetts projects we work with, as well as towns from border to border. And we work on the Commonwealth level as well with UMass and a whole bunch of different schools. Thanks. So the history of this partnership with Norfolk County and the Ag School, we answered an RFQ. We were selected in 2017. The RFQ was designed with the faculty and students involved, trying to focus on extending the educational commitment and the core structures within the Aggie School. And the first project was going to be a North Street, was the ground mount, which we're talking about today on North Street. We added some other projects to further enhance the overall project, save more money for the school, as well as some other educational benefits. Overall, we're working on what's called agricultural solar, which means crops can grow underneath it. So it fits quite nicely. I'll show you on the last slide I have here the existing Aggie courses right now, which are all focused, these 7 courses are all focused on solar and renewable energy. Overall, the project has consisted of 2 phases. The rooftop canopies, we finished some of the rooftops and 1 parking lot canopy, and the next phase is the 2 ground mounts. The first one we're discussing today is the North Street ground mount. This project was first offered by right of first refusal to the Commonwealth, which turned it down, and then it was offered to Walpole as well. The energy generated will be used to, the land was to be offered, they could rent the land. The energy generated will be used to completely offset Aggie and county energy needs. So after this project is completed, 100% of the Aggie's energy needs will be offset by this project, as well as the county needs that is in this applicable Eversource energy load. Kearsarge will continue to own and operate the solar arrays. All the arrays are landscaped and screened to minimize impacts. We'll use sheep from the Aggie to maintain the vegetation, as well as overall working on the whole agricultural solar project with the students. We've already had integration to the curriculum. There's access to the data that comes out of the first operating arrays. And we'll work with the Aggie School that will look at crops that will thrive among the solar arrays as part of the Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources dual-use agricultural solar program. At completion of the project life, Kearsarge will return the site to its pre-solar state and recycle materials. We have a lease signed with the county, and there's a decommissioning surety for complete removal at the end of the project. The projects will generate approximately $4.6 million over 20 years for the county and the Aggie to further the programs and support the overall structure, as well as estimated taxes for Walpole, which will have to be worked out, but we estimate based on similar projects that it'll be over $3 million just over 20 years. In addition, Walpole has the opportunity for what are called the the new incentive program is called the SMART program. So there's credits which are called alternative on-bill credits. So there'll be ability to have that as well. The current design includes feedback from the county public hearing held on November 19th. There was a town hearing as well that was about 3 years ago. The arrays are always built to maintain National Electric Code for safety and require approval by the fire and police department, as well as local building and electrical inspectors. The same way we did the first arrays, we would do this array, and it's the same way we do every array in every project that we do. The arrays This North Street array will be fenced, gated, locked, and monitored 24/7 with remote cameras. The site maintenance, as I said before, includes vegetation management, monitoring of the civil drainage systems, and electrical inspections. No chemicals will be used during the construction or maintenance of the array or in any of the equipment. And the last concern that we see at meetings similar to this is noise. The solar inverter noise is inaudible at 50 feet from the boundary of the array. It's about the same noise you'd hear from being 10 feet away from your refrigerator or freezer. The carbon offsets and equivalency, this was that was required by the county and the Aggie board to really get their hands around this, and it was part of the overall mission and as part of their RFQ. So the annual carbon sequestration, the equivalent of saving almost 11,000 acres per year. The rooftops and the canopies, of course, are the smaller at about 1,000 acres, and the solar ag array is 1,900, and the North Street array is 7,800. The whole financial model was looked at bringing all three of these together. Without the North Street array, the project really is not feasible. Annually, the project prevents the equivalent of 9,700 tons of carbon dioxide being released into the atmosphere, and then just some equivalencies to make it a little bit more meaningful. Electricity use, excuse me, of about 1,600 homes, and taking almost 2,000 vehicles off the road. So here's phase one. I'm sure a lot of people have driven by. It's complete. We may do some other smaller roofs in the next year or two, depending on the structure. The Aggie needs funding to fix the roofs, and hopefully with some of these other projects, they'll be able to complete these roof projects, or with other funding that they'll receive from the Commonwealth as well as the county. The canopy is complete. We're doing some landscaping around it, but it's now provided shading for cars and buses as well as electricity, and it was the venue for their senior prom, which we think is kind of neat. So combined production for the existing in June, for example, was 163,000 kilowatt hours. A normal home uses maybe 5,000 total in a year. So these are, if you look at the current course catalog, these are the existing courses right now. So this is an integration, and these are some of the things we're talking about. But these courses, the Introduction to Climate Change, it's already a course for 10th grade. Energy, the environment. So you can fit exactly what's happening with the solar project fits perfectly into the curriculum. There's the cost benefits of the solar project. We've already started this. We've had working groups with some of the teachers at the school and looking at how it might fit into some of their courses and what can be done. Is solar climate change in grade 11? Is solar a solution to mitigate global warming? What's the overall economic and environmental benefits, the Aggie and the county, from the projects in totality? Sustainability. Assist in a final project where students conducting an analysis of the sustainability of a specific aspect of Norfolk Aggie. Green engineering. Energy efficiency. Excuse me, contemporary environmental issues. All of the above concerns and ideas might be incorporated into this class and essential Aggie issues, county, town, and national implications. What I think is really neat is already this summer, one of the teachers has his students, they prepared a single axis, which means that's the type of array, that way it's laid out, an agrovoltaics solar PV model. So they've already started integrating this in. The North Street plan, which hasn't changed from what we presented at the public hearing, it's approximately 5 megawatt AC alternating current array on 17.5 acres. We spent a lot of time working very closely with the county and the Aggie, reducing any need to cut down trees. We moved it further away from North Street so that at the top or the north portion of this, you're about 200 feet away. Students will have access, 24/7 access to all production and output data. The siting designed to minimize tree clearing, as I was saying, avoiding trails. We have no wetlands impact. We did a survey, or the county did a survey to make sure we wouldn't have any wetlands impact. As I said before, the energy savings goes to the school in the Norfolk County. More than, depending on the final size, approximately 55%, and could be somewhere around 52 to 55% of what are called the energy credits, if you will, the alternative on-bill credits, which is just a dollar credit you get on your bill by tying it to the energy, will go to the county and the ag school. Annually, what we call this North Street array prevents the equivalent, as I said before, of about 7,000 tons of CO2. We brought in an engineering firm to look at impact. Obviously, this is a critical issue. You'll note that from North Street, it's about 32 feet to the top of the array, so it's very difficult to see. So we've done engineering studies as well. You'll see in the first picture, there's a car there, and that's even below the fence. In any areas that there will be potential to see the array, we've committed to put in vegetative screening, and this is something that the county as well as the Aggie insisted on from day one, and we certainly agreed with it. Next slide. Okay, now I'll turn it over to Dan Bailey.
Thank you, and sorry about that. Just one thing we didn't quite coordinate right on the PowerPoints. Again, my name is Dan Bailey. I am a land use lawyer with the Boston office of Pierce Atwood, and I'm going to talk in a little bit more detail about the zoning issues here. The zoning, as Bethany mentioned earlier, the building inspector denied the application for a building permit on the basis for three reasons. Go to the next one. The use is not allowed in the zoning district. The Dover Amendment, which I think the board is familiar with, but I'll mention it quickly and we'll get into it quite a bit. But the Dover Amendment is a section of Chapter 40A, Section 3. Chapter 40A is the Massachusetts Zoning Act that applies everywhere in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The Dover Amendment says that you can't restrict uses of religious and educational institutions, except in very limited ways. And then the third point is the essential government function, and the bylaw does not only negligibly affect essential government function, therefore it's our feeling that the bylaw cannot be enforced. So, Chapter 40A, as I mentioned, zoning bylaws must comply with the requirements of Chapter 40A. Section 3 of Chapter 40A is titled Subjects that Zoning May Not Regulate. I don't have that all up there. But these are categories of uses that the legislature has determined are so important that they should not be subject to local zoning. And there's a lengthy list of them in Section 3. There are agricultural uses. There are daycare uses. I know that has been a hot issue in this town. It was a hot issue in my town several years ago. The interior of buildings can't be regulated. The two exemptions that are applicable here are educational and religious uses, the Dover Amendment, which says that no zoning ordinance or bylaw shall prohibit, regulate, or restrict the use of land or structures for religious or educational purposes. And there's a very long line of Massachusetts court decisions that hold that the term educational use is to be interpreted very broadly, and that includes many activities beyond a normal classroom. And we see that all the time. I don't know about Walpole High School. You know, I'm not from Walpole, but I am from Westwood, and we have a high school with very tall lights, far taller than what our height requirements allow. You see that at many public high schools throughout the country, throughout the Commonwealth. We also see schools that have school stores, snack bars and coffee shops, very large athletic complexes, none of which are allowed by the underlying zoning, but they're part of the educational purpose, and therefore they're protected by the Dover Amendment. What we're proposing here is no different. It's a solar array. It's different. It's not something that has commonly become associated with schools, even though, as Andrew pointed out, Kearsarge has started to do a lot of these at different schools. But it is, in this particular case, and we'll get into the details, part and parcel of the educational experience at the agricultural school. The other exemption, found further down in Chapter 40A, and that people are less aware of, and this one dates back to 1988, it says, no zoning ordinance or bylaw shall prohibit or unreasonably regulate the installation of solar energy systems or the building of structures that facilitate the collection of solar energy, except when necessary to protect the public health, safety, and welfare. Next one, please, Bethany. And the third thing that I'm going to talk about, this is not a Chapter 40A or Chapter 40A Section 3 exemption, but it's much more the notion of essential government function, sometimes called government immunity. And the basic concept here is that one government entity cannot prohibit another government entity from doing its job. Each government entity is independent and has independent authority. It's why the town of Walpole can't regulate anything that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts would choose to do in the town of Walpole. Similarly, it can't negatively affect the operations of the county through its exercise of its zoning power. So I've quoted, this is often cited as the lead case. It's County Commissioners of Bristol versus Conservation Commission of Dartmouth, and it's a Massachusetts Supreme Court case. And what that says is that the Zoning Act, properly construed, does not allow municipal zoning regulation of land or structures owned or leased by the Commonwealth or its bodies politic, the county's a body politic, and devoted to an essential government function. Next one, please. So I'm now going to drill down a little bit more on the Dover Amendment. And there are a couple of, and I apologize because this is not exactly scintillating stuff, okay, when you start talking about zoning. I get it. I have been accused of putting an entire town meeting to sleep more than once. But there are a couple of lead cases on this that I do want to mention. And the most important one, and the most recent one, because it was just a year and a half ago, was a Massachusetts Supreme Court case involving McLean Hospital. And it was McLean Hospital versus the town of Lincoln. And McLean Hospital proposed a residential life skills program for adolescents in need of substantial medical intervention. The court found that that is an educational use, not a medical or therapeutic use. And this was proposed in the town of Lincoln in a residential district where hospitals, office buildings, medical office buildings, none of those were allowed. So unless this was a educational use, it couldn't go forward. This particular facility was highly clinical. It was built, it was an outgrowth of an existing facility that McLean has in Belmont that provides very intensive services to 15 to 20-year-old young men who have a lot of mental health challenges. So it was a combination of therapeutic, medical, and academic services. Just a couple of details on it. They called it the 3 East program. And what it did was, there were doctors and nurses, full-time nurse there. It was a residential program. And it used behavioral therapy to assist students with social and emotional needs. So it was a very therapy-based program. But it was still found to be eligible for Dover Amendment treatment. And there were a couple of things that the court said that I think are worth bearing on. First of all, the latest expression of what educational means, very broad. It encompasses that which is the process of developing and training the powers and capabilities of human beings. That's really broad. And the other thing that they emphasized in that case, that the Dover Amendment exists in part to protect educational institutions from a municipality's exercise of preferences as to what kind of educational facilities it will welcome, the very kind of restricted attitude which the Dover Amendment was intended to foreclose. And that talks to another older case on it. Next one, please. The other case that I want to mention is Regis College versus the town of Weston. This is a 9-year-old case, and it sets out a 2-part test. I don't think that's me, no, for what is educational. One is that there must be a bona fide goal that something can be reasonably described as educationally significant, and the educational component must be a primary or dominant purpose for which the land or structures are used. I also cite up there a case called Watros, which stands for the proposition that there's no, when you're talking about Dover Amendment cases, I mentioned it previously, you see classrooms, you see research labs, you see restaurants, you see stores, there's a wide variety of primary uses of property. So, Mr. Yanovich has decided that the Dover Amendment does not apply because the solar array is not predominantly an educational purpose. This is an incorrect application of the Dover Amendment in the case law. The proposed use or structure is not looked at in isolation. It has to be considered in the educational context in which it's being proposed. And Regis is a really good example of this. What was proposed at Regis was a senior, elderly senior living facility. Regis is located in Weston. It's a private college on 130 acres. Its existing campus is 70 acres. This proposed residential development was on 60 acres across the street, consisting of 8 buildings, over 700,000 square feet of buildings, almost 500,000 square feet of residences. It had non-residential components of dining, meeting, events, fitness center, healthcare, and classrooms. And the entrance fee to get one of these apartments ranged from $700,000 to $1 million. That was projected. I just want to be clear, this never got built, but there was still a Supreme Court case on it. Residents, a very key fact was that residents had to attend classes. So this is an independent living facility located 50%, as a private college on 130 acres. Almost 50% of the school, of this project was going to be at the school, take up the school space. And the Supreme Judicial Court found, yes, indeed, this can be an educational use. If we can go to the next slide, please. It stated that the promotion of the cognitive and physical well-being of elderly persons through academic and physical instruction can indeed be an educational use. And the reason I emphasize that case is because I think it shows the extent to which the court has expanded what can be an educational use. Here's something that on its own would not have been educational, but when you put all of these different types of uses that I talk about together and make them part of what no question is underlying a residential use, an educational use, then they too become part of the educational use. Next one, Bethany. So the proposed solar array qualifies for Dover Amendment treatment. The purpose of the solar array, like the apartments for the elderly in Regis, like the combination of therapeutic, medical, and residential services at McLean, is a critical component of the educational experience at Norfolk County Agricultural School. It's an active part of the curriculum, and on this I'd like to expand a little bit on what Andrew mentioned earlier. I looked at the course catalog and the website and did some research on the Norfolk County Ag School. It was really pretty interesting. The school has 4, if they were college, you'd call them majors. but there are 4 sort of components that you can specialize in. One is animal husbandry. Another is, it's basically mechanical, farm vehicles, etc. I can't remember exactly the third, but I think it's some growing of crops. And the fourth is environmental science. And if you go into the environmental science program, those classes that Andrew identified earlier, most of them, green engineering, sustainable development, those are required courses. So if you look at the website, it's clear that the agricultural school has made a real investment in training students to be able to go out and work in the renewable energy world. And Andrew will tell you how badly needed it is to have people like that. I also want to point out that the county issued a request for qualifications that required construction of the photovoltaic systems and required an integrated development of a 9th to 10th grade curriculum in solar energy. So that's also been part of what Kearsarge is doing and has been working with the school and with teachers towards developing that curriculum. The North Street ground mount, as Andrew mentioned, was the minimum required scope of the RFQ. And once the solar is constructed, the land can continue to be used for active agricultural and educational use because, as you saw, it can be, it could be hayed, but they intend to manage it with the grazing of sheep. I'm also going to move to the Chapter 48, Section 3 solar exemption. And this is a little bit trickier, but what it says is that no zoning ordinance or bylaw shall prohibit or unreasonably regulate the installation of solar energy systems or the building of structures that facilitate the collection of solar energy except where necessary to protect public health, safety, or welfare. And it's our position that denying the building permit because these ground-mounted arrays are not in Walpole's solar energy overlay district is unlawful. There have been a couple of recent land court cases. The most important one is Tracer Lane that came out in March. It was in the city of Waltham. Waltham had a overlay bylaw very similar to that of Walpole's, in that it prohibited ground-mounted solar in 98% of the city. The land court found that invalid, and it found that the city must demonstrate that any prohibition anywhere in town is necessary to protect public health, safety, or welfare. It's our view that, say this politely, but the town would be hard-pressed to enforce that ordinance. Similar case in Ware from a couple of years ago that said the zoning Board of Appeals can only deny an application for a solar project if there are health, safety, or welfare impacts. Essential government function. Again, essential government function, governmental immunity. This prevents municipalities from regulating other government bodies. There's a long letter in the materials that I submitted from Scott Lopez, who's the counsel for the county of Norfolk. And that gets into quite a bit of detail. Scott couldn't be here tonight, so I'll try and substitute. But what this does is it does not allow municipal zoning regulation of land or structures owned or leased by the Commonwealth or its counties or towns and devoted to an essential government function. I said that earlier. There is a limit, okay? The county just can't put up anything. The municipal regulation is lawful when there is only a negligible effect on operations of the other government entity. And that was the Greater Lawrence Sanitary District case. Our contention here is that because the operation of the bylaw precludes entirely ground-mounted solar, that's far more than a negligible impact. So this is just sort of chapter and verse on why Norfolk County is an independent government entity. There's a statute that says each county is, and Norfolk County enabling legislation reiterates these purposes and authorizes the county commissioners to care for county property, to sell at least county property, and to fund public school education. So the lease of land for a solar facility in order to reduce county expenses is an essential government function well within the authority of the county commissioners. Next one, please, Bethany. There are numerous examples of municipal laws being inapplicable to other government entities. Local Conservation Commission rules and regulations were inapplicable to Bristol County. That was found in the County Commission of Bristol versus Conservation Commission of Dartmouth. The Town of Dartmouth zoning bylaw does not apply to solid waste facility operated by the Greater New Bedford Regional Refuse District. And the Town of Bourne, this is the one I like the best because it's easy to relate to. The Town of Bourne zoning bylaw does not apply to parking used by the Woods Hole, by the Steamship Authority. And anybody who goes down to the Steamship Authority and parks at this time of year knows that they have parking areas spread through Bourne, Falmouth, I think maybe even at Hyannis. And none of those comply with local zoning requirements. Next slide, please. So just in wrapping this up, our third argument is that the proposed solar array qualifies as an essential government function. County is an independent government entity. County is authorized to sell and lease land and to fund public school education. The application of the solar overlay zoning to the county has much more than an only negligible effect on the operations of the county and the ag school because it entirely prevents the North Street Solar Project, which provides over $4 million in rent to the county, reduces the county's energy bills, assists the county in reducing its carbon footprint, as is required by state law, and as is going to be required for every municipal and government entity as they go forward over the next 10 or 20 years. Everybody's struggling with how they're going to try and reduce their carbon footprint. And adversely affects the county's ability to provide the ag school with a solar energy curriculum. I'll note that Scott Lopez, back in 2018, sent an opinion to KP Law's town council as to essential government function doctrine, and that has never been refuted. I also just want to mention, as Andrew did earlier, that the solar canopy was approved as an essential government function. So, conclusion, the proposed solar array is not subject to the Walpole zoning law. Under the Dover Amendment, it's part of a comprehensive energy supply program at the ag school rooftop parking lot canopy, provides solar energy into the school. It's closely woven into the school curriculum, and the RFQ put out by the county required development of the North Street ground mount and development of a solar energy curriculum, tied them together. It has the benefit of the solar exemption under Chapter 40A, Section 3. There's no negative impact to human health, safety, or welfare from this project, and it serves an essential government function. And with that, I will finish, and our presentation is done, and we welcome your questions.
Sure. Is there, you want to take questions first, or you want me to? No. Okay. Madam Chair, members of the board, Mike Yanovich, Building Commissioner for the town of Walpole. I'll just, having grown up in South Boston and this many people behind me, I'm going to turn this podium a little bit. I don't know where the allegiances are here, but thank you for council and Kearsarge for laying out the case here. They brought forward the issues which led me to my decision. So first, let me just say the building department is not anti-alternative energy or anti-green energy, which is why in fall town meeting we spoke favorably for the adoption of the stretch code as well as the Green Communities Act. This here is much different of an issue. I'll just say everything that council spoke about, I don't believe is absolute. There's no umbrella that covers everything that goes into the Dover Amendment, everything that goes into, and council did point out, the county just can't build anything.
There is a long line of cases. The town is fighting an uphill battle, but at the same time, it's not absolute. So there are 3 issues that council brought up, and I'll just speak to those 3 issues. And this decision was arrived at by viewing all the documentation. There are hundreds of emails between myself and Kearsarge and the county, phone calls between myself and Kearsarge and the county, meetings where we deliberated and reviewed what the proposal was. And yes, we did allow a solar canopy at the school. It was on the campus of the school. And yes, we did determine, no, that it wasn't an essential government function, but it was in fact Dover Amendment, because it did serve the purpose of educational use on the campus of the school. Now, how far does that go? Do you need more solar panels to then expand the education? Or, you know, for instance, the Science Museum in the city of Cambridge and Boston uses a couple of solar panels to teach their people who come in about solar energy. So let me just hit the issues that led me to my decision to deny the application. So one, we have solar overlay districts in the town where we allow installation of large-scale ground-mounted solar. And the reasoning behind that is to protect residential neighborhoods and our rural neighborhoods from being overburdened with these solar panels. As council pointed out, there have been cases recently that have overturned municipalities' desire to restrict that. But again, every case is different, and you know, I believe there are issues that many of the constituents here tonight will bring up regarding environmental issues and beyond that will you know, dovetail into what I'm going to tell you tonight. So first, the Dover Amendment. Council did point out that there needs to be a bona fide goal or purpose. I believe they satisfied that with the solar panels that were installed at the school. There was a purpose. They installed them for educational use. In primary or dominant purpose, I don't believe the solar panels on North Street are their primary or dominant purpose. I don't believe that that's the case. The second part of that is essential government function, and the issue of will it, you know, more than negligibly affect the county. I don't believe by us stopping or imposing our bylaw, which is in place to protect the town of Walpole, I don't believe that bylaw will more than negligibly affect the county. So that was the second issue that was brought up. And then the solar protection under Mass General Law 48, Section 3. That brings me back to my first opinion, where I don't believe that that's absolute. Every case in zoning, you know, has nuances and has different issues. Council for Kearsarge spoke about Regis, which was the assisted living community that was proposed. They take one class. They can, you know, have this structure because they're educational in use. You know, we're talking about solar panels on an agricultural field, not necessarily attached to the campus. And I don't believe, again, that 48 Section 3 meant for the solar protection to be absolute. And council himself said the county just can't build anything. There are protections for a municipality. It may be an uphill battle. However, again, there's constituents here tonight, I believe, that'll speak to the environmental impacts and the protection of their neighborhoods that will lend to my overarching issue of it's not absolute. All of these protections are there in Mass General Law, but you know, how far can it go? Again, we did allow the solar canopy at the school, but we allowed it, and can they keep going? Can they cover every inch of every piece of land that they own, essentially, you know, relegating it to a commercial use at that point and taking away the agricultural land and taking away the residential neighborhoods? Or is there a restriction? I think there's a gray area, and I think there's the ability for the town to defend the position that we're in right now. So that's my 5-cent summary of what's going on. I know you all received the application, and my letter was in the application that went to Kearsarge. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. think specific to the project itself, I think I'll defer to the county's attorney too.
So Kearsarge is leasing that area from the county. And so the 5 megawatt system is fairly sizable. And I'm curious about the revenue that's generated from generating power. What that relationship is between Kearsarge and the county. For example, you know, if you're generating power, are you selling it at a fixed price to the county and then you're getting to sell it for whatever the market price is? Or I'm just trying to understand sort of what Kearsarge's economic benefit is.
Under the Massachusetts Smart Program, the price is set. We give a portion of it to the county based on how much, what their energy use is right now. There's limitations what they and the county can take as part of it. There's certain incentives depending on what we do with it, but the price is set for 20 years.
I hear what you're saying. My answer to that is that the county, has to acquire power. And if they can reduce their cost of acquiring power through a solar array, I think that falls within the essential government function. You're right. If they just leased it out for a bunch of apartments, I think that, and it's all on a continuum, but I think, where something like that that's so critical to the county's operations, I think we're on that side of the balance.
It's not essential to the power system per se. It's just but I'm trying to understand what that very gray line is between what's essential to the county and what's just a nice to have, like revenue generator on the
Yeah, well, I mean, I would argue that anything that's, related to infrastructure is essential, and power is infrastructure. That's right, it's just a lease. Yep.
On the solar exclusion under section 3, there's that last phrase which says, unless it's necessary to protect very broad concepts of public health, welfare, and investment, which is sort of the purpose of zoning. So it's kind of a weird phrase to tag on at the end of that. But that being said, unlike the case that in Waltham that you mentioned, that particular ordinance did need approval from the Attorney General of the city as well as the town. But in this case, our bylaw was submitted, reviewed, and approved, and I saw the letter in the materials that sort of, forewarned the town that, this is fine, but make sure you don't apply it in a reasonable way. And part of that package was this overlay district map, which wasn't, it struck me when reading it, the Attorney General said that it wasn't on its face unreasonable to identify specific areas on the
Madam
map.
Chairman, excuse me, with respect, sir, we can't hear you.
Oh, sorry.
And you should have microphones.
This is a mobile, too.
Anybody, is this doing anything?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Let's see. So, I guess my question was, the fact that the map and the overlay district portion of the bylaw was reviewed and approved by the Attorney General, that kind of gives me pause to conclude that that the overlay district itself is unreasonable regulation, and also just those relate only to ground mounted solar, and rooftop solar on residential is allowed everywhere. So it's not doesn't operate as a complete prohibition on solar in the town. So I was just curious if you had thoughts on how we should view the Attorney General's approval of the bylaw on the map.
I do, but you probably won't agree with me. The Attorney General typically only, and Mr. Pucci will advise you on this, and he may say the same thing, he may say something a little different, but in my view, the Attorney General only overturns bylaws that are blatantly unconstitutional. They we can't rent to these people, something like that, or that have a plain procedural flaw. When it's something like this, which, yes, it's gray, what is health, safety, and welfare? They will approve it conditionally and basically say what they said to the town of Walpole, which is, be careful how you apply this, because it could be discriminatory.
So on that point, Mr. Yanovich, just could you speak a little bit more to that? It sounded like that was a critical part of your decision to deny, was that it's in a rural district. It'll have impacts on the public health, safety, and welfare in that district. Could you just speak a little bit more to that?
Sure. So again, I believe there'll be constituents that'll speak to the environmental impacts, but this is open space in the town of Walpole. Walpole is not a city. You can see the development that's going on downtown, and we're trying to do our best to enforce the existing bylaw to protect those open spaces. So the bylaw on its face is there to protect these neighborhoods, to protect the rural district. We have a zoning map that divides the town into different districts, and this district is a rural district, and the bylaw aims to protect and keep that district a rural district. So if we were to allow similar uses or structures to take up space, you'd start to lose the nature and the fabric of your rural district. So I believe the bylaw, as it says in the test for, is it an essential government function, or is it affecting the central government function, I believe the bylaw is there to protect the town and does not egregiously do so. It's there for a purpose.
Thanks. I mean, I've got the AG letter here in front of me, and I just want to point out that it's 3 pages, but what it says is 48.3 prohibits towns from adopting zoning bylaws that prohibit or unreasonably regulate the installation of solar energy systems, except where necessary to protect public health, safety, or welfare. This is a zoning exemption. Zoning does not apply unless the town can demonstrate that it affects health, safety, or welfare. Your bylaw doesn't do that. Your bylaw created a map, said put it here, 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 and here. And it was based on, okay, these rural protect residences, but you don't allow them in commercial districts either. There's no mode or manner to the distinction. So, the other thing I just want to emphasize, these types of hearings are always hard when you've got 3 different concepts. As Mr. Yanovich has said, and Mr. Fitzgerald, they all meld together. Try to keep them distinct. Okay, I know it's hard for me to do it, but if we are successful on any one of these arguments, then the building permit denial should be overturned. Thank you.
This is a question for Mr. Yanovich. When you approved the canopy, it was deemed essential government function, correct? Sorry.
On the canopy, we were relying on the Dover Amendment at that point. There are multiple letters that came in. We relied on the Dover Amendment for the canopy. As it was at the school, they talked about the curriculum, they talked about the students utilizing the canopy, the installation, as the Dover Amendment. At that point is where I brought up, okay, if you're doing another installation, how far can you go with this? How far does it extend? Can you keep saying it's the Dover Amendment and educational extends out, for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of acres? So we did allow at the campus, served a purpose. It was a structure housing vehicles. It was installed on the structure. It was not a ground-mounted solar. We do allow solar on rooftops anywhere in town, single-family home, commercial business. the rink on Route 1, single-family homes along North Street. We do allow solar everywhere in town on a structure. But at the campus, we relied on the Dover Amendment argument.
You said the area is obviously very rural. There is a decommissioning surety placed on the project to return to its original state after it's decommissioned. Would that return it back to the condition that it's in currently?
So I believe the surety, and town council can opine, the surety acts just like a bond for a subdivision, whereas if the applicant or the installer does not remove the instrument or the structures, then the town can then go ahead and remove it based on that surety, or utilizing that surety.
Okay. If the field was to be used as a classroom down the line, or some sort of teaching mechanism for students, would they need to apply for an occupancy permit to bring children in and out of there, or?
No.
How would,
No. No, so this is a specified use of solar, which we specify in our bylaws. So educational uses are specified. This is a solar array, ground-mounted solar array, which we specify in our bylaw.
And there's a security fence placed around the solar site or proposed. That's primarily a recommendation of the developer, or is that obviously part of building codes, keeping children out?
That's going to be part of the electrical code as well as NFPA, NFPA 70, which is the state electrical code, 520 CMR Chapter 12. So that's to protect anybody from going in there and fidgeting or messing with the electrical installation and getting injured. Or, you know, for the applicant or for the installer to prevent also damage or vandalism.
I think I had a couple questions about the school, which was, I don't know who would answer that, but maybe Mr. Bernstein. But does the school currently bring students to other solar projects in the surrounding area as part of its curriculum?
I don't know the answer. I know they've looked at some, but I can't answer that.
Okay. The inverters that are placed on the project site that you're proposing, would they be running at night, that decibels, sound coming off, 50-foot buffer? That wouldn't be running at
No,
night,
the
correct?
inverters without any sun, you can't, nothing happens. There's no noise at all.
Would there be storage batteries on the site?
There'll be a storage which would be in a container as specified, tied into the array.
Has that plan been submitted to the Walpole Fire Department?
We haven't gone through to the Walpole Fire Department yet. This is why we asked for limited site review to go over all of these things. We've done numerous installations throughout Massachusetts that have storage on them as well. This is not new.
And this system will be tied directly into the local area grid, correct? So, what I guess I interpret this as deemed essential, or, you know, this will be feeding into abutting area homes and similar to any other power plant, you know, in the area. Is that true? It's not going back directly to the school and stored on the school premises, correct?
No. For this North Street, some of the other ones, the way they're designed, there's a difference between what's called behind the meter and in front of the meter. This is in front of the meter, so the electrons will go back into the grid, and then Eversource will determine where the electrons will go.
Part of your decommissioning plan, would that be returning the project site back to its original condition?
Correct. It has to be. It's part of our lease with the county. So we put up enough money, we have an engineer come in, estimate how much it's going to cost to decommission, take everything out, and restore it to the pre-solar condition.
Chairman, that's all I have.
I just have a question relative to the educational Dover project. Are there specific additional educational uses or benefits, I should say, that the school will receive from this North Street project that they wouldn't receive from the arrays that are currently built?
Correct. It's a different, we've integrated in terms of the whole vegetation management, which has nothing to do with the other arrays because there is no vegetation management on those. And as well as the whole piece with the battery storage. That doesn't exist with the small roof and the parking lot canopy.
I have one question. You said, I think it was you that said it, that there will be no pesticides or chemicals during construction.
And during operation. Oh, sorry. No.
And so how are you going to maintain weeds and
Sheep. Sheep, we do it right now at a lot of our facilities.
and that's your only source?
Correct. If need be, you can come in with a weed whacker or something like that, but we've been using sheep very successfully.
And where are the sheep right now?
We use sheep from the school itself, and if we needed to augment them, we go to local farmers to bring them in. Right now, for our other facilities, we have local farmers will come in, they'll bring in the sheep. It's very safe. They'll be inside, and they'll be portioned, if you will, in different parts of the array to focus on, the weeds there.
Okay, I guess we can take questions from the public. I need hands, and I need you to come up first, and I need your name and address, please, for the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Sue Shockett. I live at 1340 North Street. I'm an RTM, Precinct 8, and also president of the Walpole Preservation Alliance. I don't have any questions. I actually just wanted to say that I support the building commissioner's denial of Kearsarge Energy's building permit. We had almost 4,000 signatures from residents of Massachusetts, mainly within Norfolk County, on our online petition opposing this project, and an overwhelming turnout for the county's November virtual public forum. So we know that the majority of residents of Walpole and of Norfolk County are very against this project. The project is opposed by the Town of Walpole Select Board, opposed by the Aggie Teachers Union, the majority of Aggie students and parents who spoke during that November public forum. Letters of concern were submitted to the county commissioners by Mass Audubon, the Mass Native Plant Trust, State Senator Paul Feeney and Representative Paul McMurtry both have stated publicly that they are vehemently opposed to this project, and they went so far as to co-sponsor legislation in the Mass State Senate to prevent large-scale solar energy installations on agricultural or recreational land of the Commonwealth. This legislation is still pending. So now here's some news. Just in today, I learned just a few hours ago that Representative McMurtry and Senator Feeney have just secured state funding to support the Walpole Preservation Alliance's work to preserve Walpole's open green space. This was already signed by Governor Charlie Baker. So, yeah, thank you. Our attorney, Luc Legere, has pointed out that the property was thoughtfully zoned by the town of Walpole, as has been mentioned, as rural residential district, which provides open space, agricultural use, and lower density single-family residential use. In fact, this land has been continuously used for agriculture purposes for over 300 years and remains one of the most cherished spaces in Walpole. Just to clarify, there was never a prison on this land. It was farming for prisoners. There was not a jail there. The use of this property for an industrial array is not allowed as of right by the town of Walpole zoning bylaws. Kearsarge and the county allege that they have the right to build under the Dover Amendment as educational use, despite the fact that Kearsarge has stated in publicly filed documents that the main objective of the installation is to generate revenue. Both the WPA attorney and Walpole Town Council refute the assertion that the project qualifies for Dover Amendment exemptions from local zoning. And again, I just want to applaud the building commissioner, Mike Yanovich. on your decision to deny this permit and hope that the Zoning Board of Appeals will uphold that decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Cliff Snuffer, RTM Precinct 2, 15 Hummingbird Lane. Madam Chairperson, members of the ZBA and staff, I want to talk to my friend from South Boston. I too am from South Boston, and I don't think you moved this far enough. But one of the things that took place, just to bring this all a little bit together, is I grew up in South Boston with some very wonderful people that are rather powerful today, one of whom is Congressman Stephen Lynch. You are sitting, if you don't know this, in a building that was made possible by Stephen Lynch working extremely hard in Washington to get the principal responsible parties that contaminated this property to pay for its cleanup. That allowed the town of Walpole, and they were, by the way, charged $39 million to do that. And that's how we got this building, the cleanup site across the street, the police station, and the ability to sit here and have tonight. I come here this evening, Madam Chairperson, to speak on behalf of like-minded people of Walpole who recommend that no commercial solar farm be built on any of the pastoral land in the town of Walpole, most especially the area of North Walpole that abuts the Adams Farm locus. Over 20-plus years ago, the people of Walpole were faced with a very expensive dichotomy: allow a major developer to build on the 365 acres known then as Isaac Farm, or tender an offer to buy it for $7 million so that it could be preserved for all the people to enjoy in the future. $7 million was and is a great deal of money. Our mantra became the following: if you're going to get the bill, you might as well buy the land. So we, the people, did just that. We bought the land. In their collective wisdom, they could see the future. Census told them that as you drove into Walpole off of Route 109, looking to their right, visitors would see it as a place of expansive green pastures, white picket fencing, and the cows. We all remember the cows. They would say, "This must be a great place to live. I wonder who owns it." I'm reminding you tonight, you do. Today, in fair market valuation terms, your $7 million investment is worth, are you ready for this? We've been talking about money, sort of. $150 million. A few years ago, I was pleased and proud to participate in a mock mortgage burning ceremony. To say it like the old-timers would, you now own it free and clear. Monetary value is one thing, but what needs to be discussed in all of this is the environmental as quite another thing. It took some wonderful, dedicated people to unveil a better understanding and a more complete knowledge of the Adams Farm area as an environmental treasure. Great people: Jack Wiley, Ted Hagler, Ralph Knoble, Yvette Morrill, the Jones family, Moody Rockwood, Kevin Sullivan, Joe Moraski, Jake Murphy, to name a few. Your farm is replete with very special inhabitants. They haven't really been talked about. 5 distinct species of deer, a monarch butterfly habitat. Those little suckers fly 2,000 miles from Walpole to Mexico. Rare flora and fauna. I hear that things are going to be over that rare flora and fauna. Several community gardens which have now got people involved in the environment and in the growth. And very importantly, let this be said, one of the greatest neighbors you could ever have, the Norfolk Aggie School. A complete itemization does exist for those of interest somewhere in our archives. Everyone associated with the Aggie have been outstanding neighbors. It is no secret that the county needs money to continue their mission of educating future generations and stewards of agricultural conservation in the creation of some of them becoming scholars. It is a widely shared opinion that abutting ground-mounted solar farms are not the way to get its funding. Quite frankly, we were talking after 20 years, when you realize what 20 years was worth to you from buying the property. $150 million is a few $1,000,000. The very product they teach their children this primary and dominant goal. They are committed to the environmental and agricultural education so that they can carry on the mantra of being good stewards of the property. So where can and should the money come from to help them out? Our governor, my friend Charlie Baker and my other friend Karen Polito, and our contingent are sitting on a couple of $2 billion from grants such as ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act. They're starting to give it out. As you know, the present president is taking shovels and filling it with money and trying to pour it into all the different states so that he can have votes when he needs them. I want a little spoonful for us. I implore our delegation to get some of it for the noble purpose of educating the next generation. We can all help them where possible. It is, after all, this generation that is going there now, including a wonderful young gentleman behind me that graduated recently. There's been much dialogue about alleged codicils of vast knowledge, such as the Dover Amendment. In Southie, when I was growing up there, they had one of those vast codicils of knowledge. It was called forced busing. I'll leave that for you all to decide. Over the years, this 70-year-old document has been involved with vague arguments, mood swing interpretations, subject to current mores that are ever changing and based on human interpretation. Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairperson, remember, Jake would get me for that, by the way. All government is not going to tax nor spend their way to prosperity. It just is not going to happen. You can, however, prioritize and invest in logical issues involving educational aspects of the environment. That is what our future needs, caring young people to grow in that methodology. Please do not allow our fight, our passion for the knowledgeable preservation of our environment, to become a footnote of failure, just for money. Thank you very much.
Nathan Mazzalo's fan of 6 Acorn Street, Bellingham. Yep. So I am an alumni, year 2021 of Norfolk Aggie. Thank you. As many of you know, we are on Main Street in Walpole. We have 4 majors: animal, environmental, AgMech, which is like agricultural mechanics, and plant. Environmental is the newest major and the smallest, but I just want to speak on behalf of the students. The project was never very public known at the school. It was not known until me and maybe 1 or 2 other people started discussing it around September when we found out. So one of the first people to tell people and staff about the project, and nobody seemed to know about it. It was very secretive. It's caused a lot of debate within the school. In fact, it's caused a vote of no confidence from the teachers union because of this project. Onto some of the environmental impacts that the school is worried about. I don't know if you guys know, but we have an eagle that lives on Willett Pond. That eagle hunts and everything on the Aggie campus and on Hilltop. Also on Hilltop, we believe are little brown bats, which are an endangered species under Massachusetts. And if that can be confirmed, which is when we found out they were hibernating, so we weren't able to find out. But once we do get confirmation, if they are, this whole thing could be shut down just from those. And then on the thing of education of the main purpose, that is totally false. The main purpose of this project is financial. It has been said multiple times in the Board of Trustee meetings, the county meetings, and everything like that. It is not for an educational purpose on this project. The whole thing is financial. School is hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. The state did not even know about that, and they've offered to help if needed on that. So I just want that to be known about that. And then canopy, because I know that was a topic that Kearsarge brought up about that. That caused a lot of problems in the school with the students because it was kind of just one day we got an email saying we couldn't park in the parking lot and we had to park on the baseball field. Not knowing how long it was going to take, it ended up being almost the entire year. Nobody knew when it was going to be done. We just came into school and there was a fence one day. Probably 2 months before the end of school, we got it back. And it caused a lot of problems with that. Landscaping, with that, we have classes in the school that could have done the work that Kearsarge contracted out to do. When if it was for educational purposes, they would have asked us classes to do that we are going to school for. For example, we had multiple trees cut down. We have our own agricultural major, which is what my major was. So when I saw another company come in, I'm like, why are students not doing this? This is what we're going to school for. This would have been perfect experience. And yeah. So I don't want to get too much into it because every time I do, it seems to fire me up and not cause me not to sleep for days on end. So I'll leave that at that. Thanks again for allowing me to speak. Thank you.
Hi, how are you? My name is Jerry Dundon. I live on 11 Sexton Farm Road, which sort of is pretty close to the proposed thing here. I'm here to voice my objection to the project and to support the Commissioner's decision. And I have a few reasons for that. First of all, I am very much pro solar energy and renewable energy, so that's not my objection at all. I have really no difficulty with Kearsarge Energy. From everything I hear about them, they are a very reputable company, and I've heard in particular of some very good things said about Andy. If I were him, I would also, if I was in the business of trying to produce solar energy, I would look to the flattest, most open, nicest field that I can get that's close to power lines, and I'd want to put it there because that's where you can do it least expensively, etc. But that's not, I think, where we really should be going with this. I think to dress up this project for the purpose of sliding it in under Dover Amendment, to dress it up as an educational thing is disingenuous, to say the least. It's a little bit like if MIT, or Massachusetts Institute of Technology, which teaches physics and nuclear physics, if they owned a piece of property in Massachusetts and said, oh, because we're teaching nuclear physics, we'd like to build a nuclear power plant out here, and we're supposed to say yes to that because that now is classified as educational requirements under the Dover Amendment. It's ludicrous, in my belief, to sort of say that this is an educational one, because that it also suggests that any other college that's teaching about sustainable energy or whatever, that if they don't have their own solar farm, that somehow their education is not as good as those schools that have their own one. The final thing I'd like to say, which is on this essential government function, if you think about it, I own land that's close to this. If I applied to put a solar farm in it, we wouldn't be having a hearing here this evening, because it would just be said no, because it's not zoned for that. The reason that we're here this evening is because Norfolk County, who is deemed a part of government, some would say essential, some would say not, a part of government, they have asked to put a solar farm here. And it's only because of that that we're having this discussion here tonight. If it was an individual, so to say that putting up a solar farm is somehow essential in government makes no sense to me whatsoever. What really is, I think, essential in government, which as I think is what this town are trying to do here, is to say, yes, we need solar energy. Where do we start, and where should we do it in a sustainable way? We should start on rooftops. We should start on previously disturbed land. The last place we should be thinking to start, even though it's the least expensive place to do it, is on pasture land, for all the reasons that have already been stated. Thank you.
Hi, thank you very much, Madam Chair and board members. My name is Carrie Snyder. I'm the Advocacy Director with the Neponset River Watershed Association. And I'm here after significant deliberation on this project in support of it. As you know, climate change poses an extraordinary challenge. Sorry, I can't speak with this on. Climate change poses an extraordinary challenge to land, water, and the ecology of the Neponset watershed, as well as to the health and safety of its residents. And if we as a community, as a state, as a global community don't dramatically reduce emissions in a really rapid way, the resulting environmental change will radically transform our landscape, make the Neponset River Watershed Association's environmental protection goals completely unattainable. The magnitude of this challenge requires trade-offs between competing environmental priorities in terms of land use, local land preservation, and the development of renewable energy sources needed to avoid the worst climate outcomes. We strongly support the installation of solar generation capacity on all developed land as a general rule, including buildings, ground and canopy mounted systems on impervious surfaces. In spite of the fact that such systems almost uniformly raise aesthetic and other objections from some communities. Unfortunately, it's not feasible to achieve the rapid deployment of solar power at the necessary scale that we need it, working only within the footprint of developed land. And as such, we need to also seriously consider proposals for ground-mounted solar installations on undeveloped land as well. The question of whether to support ground-mounted solar installations on undeveloped or agricultural land is more difficult, and in that it involves trade-offs between competing environmental goals. We believe that while some of these projects should be pursued, there are sites whose ecological significance should preclude land conversions for solar development. And that determination needs to be made on a case-by-case basis. So with that in mind, we have reviewed the current proposal for the solar installation at Norfolk Agricultural School and the adjoining Norfolk County land. And we've concluded that the environmental benefits of the project will outweigh its harms. Specifically, we've seen no persuasive evidence that the land is protected conservation land. I'm not here to argue the legal arguments. I'll let the lawyers and the board work that out. But we are not persuaded that this will have serious ecological impacts on valuable land. Perhaps most importantly, we find most of the land involved in the proposal has been previously disturbed for agricultural or forestry purposes, and as such has only limited ecological value that does not justify precluding the substantial environmental benefits of the additional renewable energy generation. We anticipate the environmental impacts at the site level would be further minimized through environmental permitting and final design process. Now, we realize that projects like this generate a strong community response on all sides, and we believe it's important to take a thoughtful approach to balance the local impacts from renewable energy generation with the local impacts of failing to implement renewable energy generation. And unfortunately, there's no scenario where this site and the entire Neponset watershed can be fully protected in light of the unique challenges posed by climate change. So we would urge you to support the permit and overturn the denial and make sure that this project is brought to fruition. Thank you very much.
William Hamilton, Precinct 5. I oppose this project because it's a health hazard to our water supply. Now, how can I say that? Well, I worked years ago with the 3-member Water and Sewer Commission, Frank Farinacci, Ted Delaney, and Ron Fusile. And they had a brilliant plan working with Bellingham and Franklin to develop a reservoir in Franklin and Bellingham that would have a gravity feed to us and to Norfolk and some other communities. But before we could accomplish that, Digital Computer in its heyday and Prime Computer in their heyday bought that land, and because their manufacturing used hazardous materials that can never be used as a reservoir for public water supply. There's no other reservoir available to us. Now, if you remember back when when Stoughton overbuilt their water supply, they had to work with their neighbors to formulate a plan for a reservoir. That was accomplished, and they were in a problem with not being able to build. They had a building moratorium for over 14 years. Now, we don't have another water source. The MWRA, some people believe they will come in and rescue us. They're no white knight. They have turned down Stoughton. They turned down adding more water to Norwood. And I don't know if they can help us if we lose our water supply. Now, this project is in Area 4 of the Water Resource Protection Overlay District, which feeds the water that recharges Area 2 and 3 of our Water Resource Protection Overlay District. Now, Area 2 is important because it is the last place in Walpole where we can put municipal wells, because you need a depth of 50 or 55 feet for that. We had a beautiful place, and the preserve was built upon it. And now we cannot go there for our municipal wells. The fact that these solar panels are built in foreign countries with all kinds of different requirements, with different hazardous materials, and we're going to have this project for 20 years sitting in Area 4, and we don't know what hazardous materials may be put in by maintenance and replacement and fixing. It also is, if we have storm damage and hazardous material from these solar panels gets to the ground, that will contaminate our water supply. Now, we already have, in parts per trillion, hazardous materials at our wellheads. If we don't have enough water recharging our water supply, then it will not dilute those hazardous materials, and they can rise from parts per trillion to parts per billion. And that could mean that we can no longer drink the water without certain treatment. Now, not everything that gets to our wellhead can be treated, petroleum being one. There's no treatment for petroleum. That's why we had to remove our gas tanks, our refueling of our town vehicles at the DPW yard, because the fear of it leaking, and it did leak a little. So we have this problem, and the Board of Health may have to stop this project if it goes any further than this, because it will have an impact on our water supply, and we have no other alternative. So that's serious. Now, I submitted a letter to the ZBA about that, and I spent 2.5 years working in the field with IEP, and they had 30 hydrologists volunteer for that study, because it was a very big study. And I also worked with Jack Jemsek in the fight to stop the sludge dump. And I also, with Mr. Snuffer, opposed the cemetery on Route 1. And we won that battle. And it wasn't the planning board that stopped it, it was the Board of Health, because a hydrologist was engaged and he proved that hazardous material would reach the wellheads at School Meadow Brook in 6 years and 9 months after the cemetery was constructed. And I do oppose the solar panels, not because I'm against solar panels and clean energy, but because it could be harmful to our water supply. I didn't oppose the cemetery because I'm against cemeteries, although I don't want to be in one. So I rise in opposition to the solar panels. It may be good, but it's not good where they're proposing it because it can harm our water supply and we have no alternative. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Fred Schwartz. I'm a resident at 15 Lakeview Drive, which is just off of North Street in the area in question. I make a couple comments. I'll keep them brief around some of the zoning topics in question tonight. Specifically, I really support some of the views of my neighbors that this is not something that applies for the Dover Amendment. I think what we've heard tonight and what we've heard in the very vote of the students and teachers at the Aggie is that this is not something that has met the standard to support a Dover Amendment, Dover Amendment call here. Access to a little bit of data for classes that already exist, and access to data that is produced by existing panels that have already been created on the site. Let's call a spade a spade. This is a profit motivated venture who is conveniently using the school to get this done. And I think we've heard it from students. We've heard it from the votes of the teachers. How can we believe that this is a Dover Amendment issue when the consumers of the education are saying that it is not met their exciting standard? I mean, a spade is a spade, everyone. Let's be honest with ourselves. And then lastly, Mr. Fitzgerald, I commend your line of questioning around really getting to a power plant is not an essential government function. This is not what we're talking about here. Okay, this is a profit-motivated idea that is attempting to use these, I'll call them loopholes, to create what will be a very profitable venture for Kearsarge Energy. And then I'll give just one personal example supporting Mr. Yanovich's claim that, or encouragement to the community here around the impact on the neighborhood. So I moved to Walpole 3 years ago with my then pregnant wife, my then 3-year-old. The first place I ever saw in this town after I turned by Bubbling Brook, coming from central Boston where we were a little bit too crowded with our growing family, was that field on North Street. And if we all would say first impressions are worth something in life, that was my first impression of the town. And that was, a part that made me choose to raise my young family there. And I would ask that on top of the legal reasons discussed tonight and the legal reasons I just discussed, to please help me protect that first impression for someday when my grandchildren come to see Grandma and Grandpa, and hopefully that's the spot that they see for the first time in our town. I would ask that. Thank you very much.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Virginia Ryan. I live in East Walpole, Mass., 26 Rose Court Way. And I am speaking tonight as a private citizen, but I do want to speak to my experience in Walpole. I moved here about 4 years ago, and I serve on the Walpole Trail Committee. I also am a water tester with the Neponset Watershed Association. I lead senior walks in the town forest. I love Walpole. I love the open space. I love the forests. I have put considerable time and attention and investment into getting to familiarize myself with this project, the proposed solar array. I feel strongly that we need to support this project. Folks, we are in an environmental crisis. We need to get as much distributed renewable generation up on our planet as quickly as possible. When you talk about the butterflies and you talk about your grandchildren, you must realize that the only way that the United States, the state of Massachusetts, town of Walpole, the whole world, the planet, we need to immediately get up as much renewable energy as we can as soon as possible. We are in a crisis. The West is burning. I can't tell you, and by the way, sir, I respectfully disagree with your comment about the fact that the Aggie School is not in the business of power generation. We have to get away from the power plants fueled by natural gas, coal. We need distributed generation. What is distributed generation? It's all of our rooftops. We need to immediately get solar panels up on our rooftops. And these solar arrays, the developers have worked very hard to incorporate the concerns of the community. They've listened to them. And you know that the NIMBYs, the people that don't want this, their voices are much louder. So I am here to passionately tell you that I love the environment, I love Walpole, I love the trails, I love this planet, I love future generations. And we need to generate, we have to get away from this central power stations that are put in poor communities that are powered by natural gas. We need these solar panels. And I love that open field as much as you do. But I really don't think, I think the way they've sited it responsibly, they've moved it. They moved the Fisher site to respect the cross-country trails. They've also, the Walpole Trail Committee was concerned about the impact on the trails in the North Array. They have moved it back from those trails. We are at the point where we have to make hard choices. This is a hard choice. And it's every single community in this country, you know, Walpole, Westwood, we citizens, we have to do something. And I say that this solar array, by the way, you know, you talk about solar arrays on the roof. Walpole is way behind other towns in terms of green community and everything else. And this building right here, you can't put solar panels on it. It's, the roof was, you know, and the fire station, you've got all these buildings that you've built with no solar panels. A lot of the buildings, they're old and existing in our state, and they're not sited properly for solar panels, and it's expensive. So it's not a quick fix. I live in a condominium. I can't put solar panels on my townhouse, even though I'd like to. So, I mean, we're in serious trouble right now, folks. And I strongly urge you to allow the solar array to be built. And thank you very much for listening to me.
Not on North Street. You can put it somewhere else.
No, North Street. I support it.
Madam Chair, Committee, thank you very much. Chris Kyoto, I live on 7 Bramwell Circle in Walpole. Can I ask a question to the team from the corporation? What happens, so how many acres of forest come down?
In this project, it's going to be about a little bit less than an acre.
Okay, what happens to the trees?
But remember, what we're taking down is a lot of scrub, and we'll be planting new trees around the vegetative screen.
What happens to the trees you take down? Because that's mature forest, isn't it?
Not what we're taking down.
What happens to the trees?
That was one of the requirements from the county and the ag.
Okay.
Stay away from the mature trees, so we moved.
And the reimbursement to the town, does that go up adjusted with inflation? 20 years, does the reimbursement to the town, does that go up with inflation? Is it adjusted for inflation? Because it'll get dwarfed. The number will seem large now, but in 20 years it'll be less. So as the cost of electricity goes up, does the reimbursement to the town go up?
So the cost of electricity is fixed in this program, and there's an escalator built into the lease with the county, if that's the question you're asking.
No, I just, the revenues that go into the town, they remain fixed? Do they tax? Does it go up with inflation?
Tied to the town's tax rate, so they would go up.
Okay. So I came here with an open mind. I drive a Chevy Volt. I'm very green. My kids go crazy because I'm turning off lights. But I think the commissioner got it right. I really, with all due respect, I'm as green as can be. I applaud the last passionate speaker. But it's going to come from conservation. 5 megs is not that big. We need to I tried to put a solar panel on my rooftop, wherever she is. But this is not the right place. I think you got it right. I think, with all due respect, it reminds me too much of the power plant from 10 years ago, which is the last time I stood before here. This is a corporation, and there's some stretchings of truth here. You know, in terms of, and also I just have some questions about credibility and goats, you know, in terms of, you know, saying you're going to use the goats there to take down the weeds. Every solar panel I've seen, sheep, whatever, sorry, but every solar panel I've seen, and I'm a fan of arrays, but every solar array I've seen, they have weeds and rocks, and I think that there's a stretching problem where you're hijacking the charter of the Aggie, saying, well, we're going to do this to education. Make a great point. You have to put a nuclear power plant there as well, and how many solar arrays do you really need? So I think you got it right. I applaud you, and I came here with an open mind. I'm very green. I applaud that last speaker. I think you're right, but I think this is the wrong place to do it for multiple reasons. And then also the environment, restoring it to its native state. If you have any kind of mature trees, in 20 years you take the stuff down, it's tough to put back a mature forest or even a mature prairie or green space. And I've looked into that. So I'm all green, but I think you got it right, and I think the town's got it right, and I speak against this. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mark Sullivan, RTM Precinct 3. I'm also a member of the FinCom. So kind of with the FinCom background, I just had this thought that I'd throw out there. So the land is separate from the school. It's farther up North Street. So I'm thinking to myself, why doesn't Walpole buy the land? Okay, we buy the land, we build the solar array, okay, only long enough till it pays for the land. Then we take the solar array down, and then we lease the land to North Fork Aggie so that it can be used for the students. So again, as a member of the FinCom, I'm just thinking this may not be so far-fetched. The Walpole ends up owning the land. We turn it back to its original part as the way we've all enjoyed it right now, but we use the solar array to actually pay for the purchase so it doesn't cost the Walpole residents anything. Just something to think about. Thank you.
Good, how are you? Brandon Bale, 7 Covey Road, Walpole. So thanks for taking the time to meet with everyone and hear everyone out. I'll be brief. I'm going to echo a lot of what the folks who have spoke out against this solar project have said, so I won't repeat any of that. I definitely applaud the building commissioner and his decision, and I support it. But I will say, listening to Kearsarge's presentation tonight, 2 things struck out at me. One was, you know, in relation to the Dover Act, in that their claim that, you know, having this new ground-mounted solar panel array would be critical for the educational purposes of the students. That's a key word, critical, and what does that mean? If it's just storage of the solar energy and learning how to manipulate that once it's stored, is that really critical for the students to learn that piece to, you know, support their sustainability education? That's a good question to ask, and I kind of doubt that. So I'm an engineer and physicist by training, and I know about some of these systems, and that doesn't seem to me to be a critical component to that. So I would disagree with that. The other piece is on the welfare question. So the welfare of the community. I mean, you've heard a lot of people speak tonight who care about this and who are really against it. And that speaks to the welfare of the community. I mean, it's a beautiful piece of land. you know, it's critical to this community, and I think that we should preserve it if we can for the welfare of the community. There's spiritual welfare, but there's also economic welfare for the people who have homes around that area. So those two definitely constitute as you know, necessary to think about for the community. So thank you.
Thank you. Vic Senna, 20 Homeward Lane, Walpole. On a couple of points. Number one, California went many years ago towards solar and wind. Decommissioned nuclear plants, decommissioned fossil plants, and what do they have now? Solar only generates when the sun's out, okay? Wind, no power. So what do they have consequently? Brownouts and blackouts. You hear about them all the time. It's not because of fires, okay? It's because they went too much to the green side. You have to have a balance. I've been in the energy business for 25 years, building plants, tearing plants down, okay? And all green is not going to work. You have to have nuclear, water power, okay? You have to have gas power. And by the way, GE just commissioned the first gas-fired plant in North Carolina. 0 emissions. That's where it's going, gas-fired, okay? Enough said about that. Number two, you know, county government is going away. Okay? All right, so it's going to be called the Norfolk County Agricultural School, or is the state going to take it over? The state's got plenty of dough. Okay? They don't need the money. Okay? This is strictly a money deal. All right? And, you know, to be practical about it, okay, you're going to take a beautiful part of Walpole. I've lived here for almost 50 years. And you're going to turn it into an industrial park. That's going to ruin the neighborhood. It's going to ruin the town. Okay? Instead of putting it on that property, why don't we put it in the Old Town dump? Huh? Where did Brockton put theirs? On their Old Town dump. Where do most of these arrays go? Old Town dumps. Okay? It's not something that communities are very proud of and want to show off. Okay? I think it's the wrong place, and I don't want it. Thank you.
Anybody else want to come up? Anybody up here have any other questions?
I just have one question about the current use of the property. Obviously, it's for agricultural use, but is there any public access trails or other? Is it open space in the sense that it's available to the public to walk around, or is it strictly limited to agricultural uses?
You can access it.
It connects to Adams Farm.
I'd like to address that.
Come on up and answer.
Yeah, Rudy Barajas, 1400 North Street. So I live directly across from a portion of the fields, and I've been there for over 20 years. And we've been talking a lot about the agricultural use, but you raised a very good question, because there is a, you know, this property, Norfolk County's property, abuts the Patton Forest and is contiguous with Adams Farm. So you can actually go from Adams Farm, you know, through the Patton Forest and, you know, across Norfolk Aggie land. And, you know, it's kind of a contiguous trail system. It's absolutely beautiful back there. There's wetlands. And I was just looking through my phone at a photograph of a sign that says, "Welcome to the Patton Forest." Next to that sign is where Senator, Feeney and Representative McMurtry were standing addressing the Walpole Preservation Alliance right next to that sign. And over their shoulders in that photograph is the scrub that these guys want to take down. So you can stand on a beautiful trail system and says, welcome to the Patton Forest. And someday there will be a chain link fence there. And on the other side of that chain link fence, there will be solar panels. It will be industrialized. Yes, you will still be welcome to the Patton Forest, but I would have to think that zoning, the whole reason for the zoning, we talked about protecting the agricultural integrity of that part of town, but there also is, the natural land use and the trail system and the environmental uses, I think that are also valuable to the town of Walpole. And I would think that those zoning laws are not only protecting the rural character, but also the beautiful land that's there as well. Thank you.
Is there anything you would like to say, Mike?
No, I think
Well said. Applicant, would you guys like to say anything else?
No, not at this point.
Before we wrap up? Okay, I think we continue, obviously. And I guess we should go, do you guys have a preference? Is beginning of September okay? For the applicant? Did you get the letter, first of all, from the town engineer today?
Letter from the town engineer?
Town engineer letter? No? Yeah, it's dated July, no, June.
Oh, I think we got that one.
You do have that, okay.
Yeah.
We only have one meeting in August, I didn't know, and we have two in September.
But when are you gone?
August 11th.
When's your meeting in August?
Do we have one yet?
We don't even
We don't have one yet.
Uh,
We have enough board members, that's okay.
Yeah, but we need 4 votes out of 5. And if you're gone, we need a unanimous vote.
4 out of 4.
Yep. So I'd like to try and do this while we still have you.
How do you feel, council?
Well, what is our deadline on, you have 100 days. So, you can do that as of right. If you're gonna go beyond the 100 days, you're gonna need assent and a file, written consent to that. So let's figure that out first. You open this within 65 days, I imagine.
Yeah.
And how close are we to the 100-day?
Let's say I filed. About 5 weeks ago. Yeah, I think I filed on the last day that we could file.
What day did you file?
Let me grab it.
6/17 I have.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, right on, yeah, exactly, it's stamped in, June 10th, okay. So that would put us out to, yeah. So June, July, August, September, they'll put us out to about September 20th.
Yeah, so you would be able to, you're well within the time, so as long as if you are inclined to continue the public hearing, you would be able to do that as long as you do it within that 100 days, so you can do the decision in time.
And what's the drop dead?
But
if you're, if you're contemplating going beyond that deadline, you would need the consent. And having said that, if they're seeking an accommodation that they are requesting you to, continue and close the hearing to maintain a 5-member board, that's up to you if you want to accommodate that request. And I also don't know about your own schedule. Is the board available to do something? He wants you to continue the hearing and close before August 11th.
Yes.
And I don't,
within your discretion, because you're well within the time for issuing a decision. So you can try to honor that request if it's possible or feasible, or you could deny it. It's both in your discretion. And as long as you have that continued hearing date, you know, within the ultimate deadline, you're free to, you know, deny the requested accommodation. Is that fair? Do you,
How about August 4th? Is that okay with anybody?
Yeah, that works.
August 4th, anybody? Okay, Gage? Is that doable for you, George?
I have a 40B that night that I cannot have covered by somebody else. I apologize.
You cannot.
I cannot, no.
Can you have somebody else cover this?
Should we do the
No.
28th next week?
No way.
Do it after.
I'll take that as a compliment.
Yeah.
That's all we have.
No, you're stuck with me for the duration. That's otherwise a pretty decent week for me. That just the fourth is bad for me that week, but I'm otherwise
Another day that week?
around. Yeah.
Like the 3rd?
Yes, I'm totally
Is
free
anyone
the 3rd.
available on a Tuesday night? Tuesday night, the 3rd? Is that okay? Is that okay with you?
Fine with us. We'll make it work.
For that. They've been doing that for years.
Is that
Really?
Is that a problem?
Yeah, but he has to be a select board. So how about
I can be there afterwards.
how about Thursday, the 5th?
Okay. I can do the 5th.
Lenny's not on the 5th. That's free.
What?
That's free. The 5th
The
is
5th is good now? Now we'll move to the 5th, sorry. Thank you for these. Can you imagine if we did that? All right, so the 5th.
5th.
It was good for you. Okay. You can't hear.
Oh.
August 5th?
Yeah, August 5th.
I'm not here.
Second, I'm around.
Second? August 2nd?
It's just Pat can't.
Oh, it's just, I can come here.
No.
What about the 9th?
9th works.
9? 9? 9? Finally found him.
No, we didn't.
Be busy that day. Yeah, I could try to. Yeah. I'll do that.
What day is that again? 3rd? We're back to the 3rd.
No, Andrew is not available on the 3rd. Andrew's gone on the 3rd, that week.
What about 29? 2 nights in a row.
I'm on vacation the 28th to the 30th.
You're on vacation.
Yeah, and I can't reschedule it.
The 3rd?
I will be.
Oh, still be here.
Yeah, but we could do did you mention the 10th, I think? I thought it was Patrick.
I'm not busy. I mean, I'm unavailable the week of the 9th to the 13th. Honeymoon.
That's good. That qualifies.
That's all right. Who wants to go on?
Yeah, don't let him get married. All right, so what are we down to, guys, here?
Can he change his schedule at all?
No.
That's gotten to be a problem. Do you want that?
I mean, I'll go ask.
I just asked him to see if he could reschedule his conflict, because they'll want to accommodate you. You're kind of bending over to accommodate them.
The ninth is fine.
No, he's on his honeymoon.
Well, but
I don't know if they need me here.
yeah, I mean, do you need him if George? But do you need him if George is here?
Suzanne, he's fine not being here.
Ninth.
Yes.
Is everyone in agreement on that?
That's gonna be quite a week.
It's just how things go now. It's no longer, there is nothing but work.
And that's your summer schedule.
I would recommend, Suzanne, usually I speak when spoken to, but since you have so much interest in it, I would just explain to people that, there's a good chance you'll end up closing the public hearing that night. You're
Are you
not.
all listening to him? No, can't hear you.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
Hello. Yes. Hi. Good evening again. I'm George Pucci from Town Council's office. I just said to the chair, normally I speak when spoken to, but this, with all the public interest in this and particular procedural rules and all this side conversation that you could not hear, was just scheduling. People trying to figure out their schedules to try to get the public hearing in. I just recommended to the chair to notify everybody that there's a strong chance that they're going to take a vote to continue tonight's hearing to August 9. There's a good chance that they will close the public hearing on August 9. So if anybody has any, they will not be able to take any further submissions from anybody, orally or in writing. So if you have anything that you want to submit to the board relevant to this appeal, you'll want to do that before they possibly close the public hearing on the 9th. And it'll be for the chair to run that meeting on the 9th. Oftentimes, a chair will ask the public to not repeat everything that was said before, to just limit the further public hearing to any additional new information or any clarifications or rebuttal. That will be in her discretion whether to limit it that way on the 9th. But just be clear that that's kind of your cutoff date to get anything that you want considered by the board with this decision. After they close the public hearing, the board will take a vote on whether to uphold or deny the appeal of the building commissioner's order. Procedurally, to overturn the building commissioner's order, they need a supermajority. So they'll need, if there's still all 5 members that are eligible that night, they will need a 4-to-1 vote to overturn that decision. Even if they voted 3-2 to overturn it, that would fail. So that's just a little bit of the procedures going on, but the main thing is to just advise you that once the public hearing is closed on this, it is closed, and that's anticipated to occur on August 9.
Does anybody have any questions of council? Come on up and ask, because I don't know if we can hear you back there either.
There was somebody that stepped away from the, at the beginning.
Yes.
Who that was, are they involved in this vote?
No, they are not.
They're not.
No.
Okay, so how many meetings?
There's us 5 that will vote.
Yeah, there was one member, typically the chair recused himself from this, so they designated an alternate member to sit as a voting member on this application, and so you have a 5-member board. You have 5 eligible voters on the case of the 5-member board.
Go ahead.
What is the last date that you have to make, what is the date that you have to make your decision by?
I think you said
September 25th.
September 25, but we're going to make it on the 9th.
You're going to make it on the 9th.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Pretty sure.
Well, yeah, or you could also deliberate following that. You're not bound to close the hearing. I'm just advising that there's a good chance they will close the hearing that night. They do have 100 days to issue the decision. So they could choose to do deliberations after that, or they could close the hearing that night, deliberate that night, and vote on it that night.
Building commissioner. Building commissioner, thank you. Senior moment. What is the process then? Does that mean that that's the end of it, or can the group appeal to a higher level after over and above the town? That's a good question for council.
Yes, it can be appealed to court, to either the land court or the superior court. The zoning board's decision, say hypothetically there's a vote or say there's a vote and it fails to overturn the commissioner's decision, the appellant would have the right to appeal that decision to superior court or land court to get the court to basically issue a different ruling. And those cases are on new evidence. So what that means is, in the event of an appeal to court, the court would not be bound by the record that was before the Zoning Board of Appeals. The court would hear that. They call it de novo, which is just on new evidence, on whatever evidence is then presented to the court through witnesses or otherwise. So that's how that would work. Yeah, I think we're getting a little, I'm not, yeah. It depends. That's not. I'm just giving some general, procedural updates to people that,
Anybody else have any questions? Is that meeting on the night open to the public? Do you have microphones then? Excuse me? Yeah, well, I will ask him to get the regular microphones. This is not a normal meeting room, so that's why.
Did you want the microphone?
No, I'm all set. I can holler. I'm a good holler. I'm an Irishman. So anyway, can I have a motion? Did we already do that? I have a motion. Continue. Till August 9th, 7 p.m. And I'm not, do we know, is it going to be here? Should we? So we're going to have it at the main meeting room at Town Hall next time? Even if you have a crowd this large? Yeah, because I think it's it, yeah. Okay. But then we'll definitely hear better too, that's for sure. Yeah, you'll definitely have it. Yeah, so the motion is for August 9th at 7 p.m. at Town Hall. Thank you. So moved. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, we're all set. Great, thank you all for coming out. Thank you. Thank you.
It was entertaining. I learned a lot.
Also for me tonight, John. Thank you.
All right, hang on.
is for 35 Urban Drive. This is for a in-law suite. And there was a notice posted, which is, notice is hereby given that the Board of Appeals of the Town of Walpole will hold a public hearing in the main meeting room of Town Hall, which was moved to here on Wednesday, July 21st, for an application of Carrie
Carolina.
Case number 21-10 with respect to property located at 35 Irving Drive, Walpole, Mass. And that is in the zoning district RB. The application is for a special permit under section 5B2 of the zoning bylaws to allow construction of an accessory in-law suite onto an existing single-family dwelling located at 35 Irving Drive. So, we have the plans before us, and would you please identify yourself and
Yes. My name's Eric Carolina. My wife is Carrie Carolina. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to make it this evening. One of our children is not feeling well. So, we moved to Walpole in 2014, my wife and I. Since then, we've had 2 kids, 2 boys, 5 and 2 years old. So, we love living in Walpole. We're requesting a permit to build an in-law addition for my mother-in-law, who's over there. Unfortunately, this past December, my father-in-law passed away, left the decision to be made on where my mother-in-law was going to stay in the house that they had lived in for years in Norwood, or what the options were. For many reasons, you know, financial decisions as well as first floor living, it was decided that we would build an in-law addition at our house at 35 Irving Drive in Walpole. So at this point, we believe that we are within the criteria for the addition, setbacks and whatnot, and I'm here to answer any questions or concerns that you might have regarding that.
Okay, thank you. So one of the questions we always look at is this an apartment or is this a in-law suite?
It's a suite. I mean, it's connected with a cased opening. There's no separation with a door.
You did a nice job with that, and that's what, yeah. Well, you know, yeah, Suzanne just pointed out, it says accessory apartment, right on the plan. Right on the plan, but that's, what I saw was the 36-inch wide encased opening, not a door, into the mudroom, which then goes into the family room.
Yep.
So, what I see is, at least, I see that it flows into the house unrestricted. And it's a one-bedroom, you know.
Yeah, pretty standard.
It's, you know, one bedroom being added. I did have a question. Are you on septic or sewer at this house?
Sewer.
Is the pool gone?
Yes. Yeah, we took that down probably 4 years ago now.
I was gonna say you could jump out of the bedroom.
No, it was one of those things. We bought the house, the pool came with it. I've never had a pool. I gave it a go for a couple of years, and
A lot of work.
yeah, no.
I've never had one either. That's why I know it's a lot of work.
My kids don't remember it, so they don't miss it.
That's good. Don't tell them.
Board members, do you have any questions on the plans or any questions for the applicant?
The fire department stamp these?
So we actually went to the fire department, and they said that they would review the plans with the building department, and once this was approved here. So we did go to them, but they actually, there might be a letter in one of the packages too. I think there was a letter from the fire department. But we did go to them, but they said they would review it once it's approved here for permit. Because we would have to update our dwelling that we're currently in with the current devices.
Who asked that question? Drew. And I think whenever they work with the building inspector, that the building inspector requires that. So one thing on the set of plans you have, in a couple places, it refers to it as, actually even the front page, calls it an accessory apartment.
Okay.
And so, I think do you want that changed in the final plans? Would you
Okay.
change that in the final plans that are submitted to the building
To
inspector?
in-law suite or whatever. Okay.
So
Sure.
it actually says what you're requesting relief for.
Yeah.
Which is, in-law, accessory in-law suite.
Sure.
That was the word you wanted.
Sure. Understand.
Please.
Yep.
We all looked at it and went, ah!
No, I know.
At least I did, and then she did.
No, that really is my mother-in-law. She's not going to be a tenant. She will be part of the family.
You're an accessory right now. Not a good look.
I might put a door chime somewhere so I know that she's coming, but other than that, we're good.
No, the rest of the plan looks great.
I understand.
So I think the plans look good. It accomplishes what you want, but also what the town wants as far as having it flow into the house. You know, the egresses. Did you work with the building inspector on this?
We had contacted, yeah. We had a couple questions and we had contacted, yeah.
Yeah, I suppose his wife rang a few times, with us on the phone to work through some of the, again, like the fire department that Drew asked for.
Yeah.
The fire department used because it falls in a building code and fire with the smokes and that. They don't get addressed till they actually get a set of plans to stamp and approve. Because it goes on the number of systems, so if you have a bigger house, you could be going from alarm smoke systems up to adding a panel to the house or vice versa. With adding a bedroom, all the house is going to be brought up to code with hardwired smoke. So we usually do that on the plan of when he applies for the permit after your approval, and we send it out to the fire department through the system, and they'll look at it then.
Okay.
Do you have any concerns with this plans as shown?
No, it meets all the criteria for zoning with the setbacks. The way it's being built is tied in nicely to the house. Pretty straightforward.
And in our standard conditions for a decision, it says that it can only be, only a immediate, well, what is the family? What?
The
Third of kin can live there. No separate utilities.
Yep.
So there's requirements so that
Sure.
so that it does not become
Understood.
Independent apartment. Okay. Good. Board members, you good?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Dave? Okay. Actually, the five of us will be voting on it. Okay. Do you want to close the hearing?
Yes.
Does anybody have anything else they want before we close the hearing? Yeah. So, Amy, would you just note that on their final plans, they need to change that to in-law suite?
Will do.
A comment maybe from the engineering firm?
I'm sorry.
Was it about the rain capture?
Yes. I just wanted to
Sure.
flag that. That'll just become a condition. I just want to make sure.
Or whatever they call it. I call it rain capture, but. Yeah. Rain leader.
Yeah, it says, require all roof runoff to be recharged. We suggest this requirement be added to the decision as a condition of approval. That a design and recharge be submitted to with the building permit to be approved by this department in conjunction with the building commissioner's office. So Amy, would you add that?
It's a wet area.
Okay. Anything else? So this is just a vote to close the hearing. So
I'll make a motion to close. Second.
made by Suzanne, seconded by Jane. Any further discussion on closing the hearing? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained, so carried. Okay, now on the actual application, could I have a motion to approve case number 21-10 for 35 Irving Drive based on the plans shown dated June 1st, 2020, and the plot plan
Is Irving Drive not in South Walpole?
Yes.
It is?
but not South Walpole zip code.
Why not?
I don't know, I think it is zip code. And the plot plan dated July 9th, 2021.
if I can hear the stadium at South Walpole, right?
That means you should be a 7-1 still.
Based on those plans, and to include the drainage, roof drains, and change to accessory in-law suite.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion on that? Everybody good? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so carried. Okay, good luck.
Thank you. One step closer. Not the best time to be building with the costs, but it is what it is.
There you go. It'll be worth it.
I'm sorry.
Sorry you had to sit a whole night with us.
Oh, no.
No, but I learned. I can get a sheet now. I need
Okay, we're still on TV.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, my boy. Thank
Okay.
you all.
Thank
Have
you.
a good one.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, the next thing we have is minutes, and we have minutes
Thank you.
for July 14th. We got caught up on the last ones. One thing on that, Amy, I noticed, did you notice, the minutes at the top says it was by Zoom webinar, and it should be, we were back in person at that point.
Okay.
Okay. I read them, everything else looked good. Bob, did you read them? Yeah. Everything else looked good. That's the approval of Bob. Okay, does anybody have any questions? And could somebody make a motion to approve the minutes of July 14th?
Yeah, second.
Okay, moved by Bob, second by Suzanne. Further discussion on the minutes? If you were here, you can vote on it. All those in favor of the minutes, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstained? And Jane abstained.
Those are for the two sets or the one?
Yes, oh.
Oh,
you know,
one's executive.
Yeah,
I'll
one's
make a
executive
motion for the
session.
executive session.
Okay, and I thought that was well done, executive session, I had no issues, were you good with it? Yeah, okay. And also, yes, the second one, the executive session, and there was nothing about the location of that meeting for July 14th. Could I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Moved by Suzanne. Second by Bob. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.